Most entrepreneurs will build a business and they'll lose their family in the process. If we're being real, some of you are running your company like it's the next big unicorn. Meanwhile, your marriage is hanging on by a thread and your kids barely know you. Let me tell you something that nobody's saying out loud. Winning in business while losing at home is not success. It's failure disguised as a hustle, leading to a life of regret. Today on The Exit, we're going to be diving in on how you build wealth without wrecking your family. The frameworks, the systems, the hard decisions that I've made in my own life, that Aaron's made in his own life, so that you don't wake up rich and alone. Real freedom isn't just about a fat exit. It's about exiting the grind with your family still by your side. This is Own the Exit. So let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Own the Exit. Aaron and I are going to be talking today about balancing business and family leadership. We want to dive into three key principles. I'm sitting here in North Carolina with my family right now in an office off of my in-laws' guest bedroom. And my kids are in there playing right now. And as soon as I jump off this episode, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to give them a big hug. I'm going to hang out with them for a few minutes. And so
they might even interrupt this episode. They could burst through that door at any minute.
They may run through that door any minute. And you know what? I am perfectly happy with that. And I know you feel the same, Aaron.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, this is an exciting episode. I'm excited to jump in because, like you said, it's something that's it can always be a bit of a struggle or a wrestle or just an internal conflict, right? Of you're working, you're doing a good job at work, but then you don't feel like you're doing a good job at home, right? Or vice versa. I'm doing a good job at home, but now I feel like my work is suffering. And I guess I'm just speaking for myself right now, but that's something that I've experienced or I guess thoughts I've had.
Yeah. I had a realization years ago. I read a study, I think it was from Pew Research or something like that, where it said that 86% of fathers in America feel like they're failing. And the top two reasons given for that is, one, I feel like I spend so much time working to provide for my family that I can't be present for my family. Mm-hmm. And the second reason is, even though I do that, I feel like I'm still not able to provide well enough for my family. Mm-hmm. And so there's this constant tension that exists inside of entrepreneurs specifically. And I would say men, at least from the research, probably struggle with this even more. And that's, how can I be a part of the 14%? If 86% of men feel like they're failing, how can I be a part of the 14% that feel like they're getting it right? And so what you and I talk about all the time, Aaron, I know that you and I are both extremely committed to our families. You've got 5 kids. I've got 3 kids. We both do the normal stuff that everybody's talking about, right? Regular date nights, one-on-one time with the kids, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to dive in on this episode and talk really about 3 kind of key principles that help to really solidify, at least for me, they have the balancing of leading my family and running my business. Mm-hmm. And so the first one that I'd love for us to dive into is something that I call ruthless prioritization. Business is a game, but family is the championship. The only reason that I want to be massively successful in business and have had the success that I've had so far is because I want to give my family a life that they deserve, the life that they deserve. But building a business, it is an intense, never-ending game, it seems. There's always another deal, another opportunity, another project that demands attention. At the end of the day, though, nobody on their deathbed wishes that they'd close just one more deal, right? Your family is your championship. It's where the true legacy is built. And I think for me, that means I have to be ruthless in prioritization. When I'm at work, I want to go all in. But when I'm at home, I want to have the same mentality. When I'm with my family, I want to go all in, shut everything else down, be present, schedule that non-negotiable family time, the way that I schedule investor calls, the way that I schedule meetings and other things that grow my business. Because if I don't intentionally prioritize my family, then my business is going to steal every free minute that I have. Mm-hmm. Aaron, I'd love to hear your approach to how you prioritize family and business and how you're ruthless in prioritizing.
Yeah, I think in business, it's easy to like, you bust out your whiteboard, you've got all of your high level goals, and you do all this planning and all this stuff like we all do in business, but like applying that to our families. And so I was finding like, even with date nights and hanging out with kids and everything, it was like, it was all very, it was good and everything, but it wasn't like that higher level intention.
Hmm.
And so that's one thing I did is I've for my boys, they're all under the age of 11. I created what I call the 5 areas of development. And so I've got 5 areas for their personal growth. It's spiritual, physical, and athletic. It's their attitudes, it's educational, it's life experiences, it's entrepreneurship. And I have these 5 areas that are then broken down into a lot of subcategories. And those are like the very high level, like when they're 18 years old, they're going to wave to me and say, "I'll see you later, Dad. I'm off on my own now." And
Yeah.
so on that day, like I'm working backwards. Like we all do it for retirement. Like we're like, hey, when I'm 65, I want to have $1 million or whatever, so I don't have to work anymore. That's a very normal thought process that whether you're saving up or not, we have all heard that or had that thought. So I want to do the same thing though when looking back from when my kids are 18 years old and go off to college, or they're 20 years old, whatever the exact age is, and they're off into the world. So what am I
Yeah.
giving them, or how are they leaving equipped? And because I think like that, to me, that's like a bigger day than me turning 65 and retiring.
Yeah.
I have more of a concern, which is them heading out of the house, than I do that future day. Yeah. And so that's why I have these like where I'm working backwards. I've got between, depending on their ages, I have between 7 to 18 years to reverse engineer that. So that's why I have these 5 areas. And then what we do is those then inform the weekly and monthly calendar. If I'm saying that this thing is a priority, then it needs to be in the calendar. And that's what we do in business. We do it normally, right? We have a quarterly meeting or monthly, but we don't do it with our families. We just roll. And even if we're
Yeah.
doing the date nights, and even if we're hanging out where Saturday's kind of a day off, there's not the same level of intention. And so that's what I've been trying to do is, if I'm going to give my energy to a business in this way, I want to do the same thing with my family, where there's a purpose and we're working towards something where I can look back and be like, hey, I'm super proud of, I did my best. I did everything that I could do to get us here.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners who have to work a lot of hours, I don't know. There's times in business where it's just impossible to get around that. And what I'm hearing you say is like that being intentional about building a focused approach to how you're going to interact with your family. It ensures that the time that you do have with them has significant quality, even when it doesn't have as much quantity as you would want in those seasons. And I think quality over quantity is super important. There's a lot of research out about this. Actually, I read a study from the Harvard Business Review, for example, that said employees or business owners that spend at least 2 to 3 uninterrupted hours per day with their family, with their kids, actually report higher overall life satisfaction, and were 31% more productive at their work. And so focusing on quality uninterrupted time, but that quality uninterrupted time has to have some focus, or else it just ends up at the end of the day when you're exhausted and tired and you're at your worst.
Mm-hmm.
You just, hey, let's sit down and have the third family movie night of the week. And really it's just because all you want to do is just lay on the couch and you don't want to have to be active. And that's, I'm
Well,
guilty. Right. So
are you talking to me right now? No. We just watched multiple Star Wars. We did The
yeah.
Mandalorian. It's very easy to just to keep doing more of the passive. But one point on that though is I do think that quality happens in the midst of quantity.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of times we're like, I'm going to have this quality moment, but we're so rushed. I'm just talking about
Mm.
myself. There's so many things to do in business and personal, and then your family, and you're trying to schedule everything back to back and trying to make it all quality. And sometimes that, like, you're watching that 2-hour movie and there's that one comment that my son would make that is a quality thing.
It's a
But it,
quality
it
moment.
happens in the midst of a 2-hour quantity time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, it's just hard to schedule everything all back to back, and that's something for me or for like high achievers where where you're trying to just make everything productive, even the family time. But it's like now we're not, we just have to be together. We have to create that environment where you'll have those pops of quality. Like you think when you have a little baby, he's like a 2-year-old and he says a phrase or he does something super cute. Like it happens maybe twice a day. Like you
Yeah.
can't like force it to happen. It happens during the quantity time that you're with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a good point that quality often is a byproduct of quantity, right? Quality time is a byproduct of quantity of time. But being able to then figure out and be intentional the same way we are in our business, right? Like we're intentional about, we want to get the most out of the 40-hour, 50-hour, 70-hour work week, whatever it is. I know you and I are pretty ruthless in prioritizing. We try to only work around 40 hours a week on our business. And so what we think about from a business perspective is how can I get the most out of that 40 hours? I know you and I've had conversations where we end up going off on vision on an hour call or whatever, and it eats into the time that we both have had to work on something. I know I've made comments to you. It's, hey, I've got 4 hours of work now to do, and I only got 2 hours to do them in. So I'm going to have to
Yeah.
fit, but I figure out how to get it done, right? How
Mm.
to fit the quality of work into the quantity of time that I actually have. There's another interesting article from, I think it's Families and Work Institute.
Hmm.
It's something like 70% of kids say they wish that they had more meaningful interactions with their parents, not more time with them. So the biggest need that if you flip the script and look at what are kids wanting more of from their parents, it's not quantity of time, it's meaningful interaction. And that's why I'm like, is it really that helpful to make sure that I cut off of work right at 5 or 5:30 every day so that I can go home and be exhausted and tired and
Hmm.
not really have quality? What kind of impact is that actually having on my kids? Are they still feeling that need, even though I'm prioritizing? And so
Yeah.
I feel the point that you're making is so important, that we have to not only prioritize giving our family a quantity of time, which we want to do that, we have to prioritize with whatever quantity of time we have, how can we make the most out of that?
Yeah. Yeah,
What are the
those
things?
rituals, those whether it's a family dinners, the family meetings, the family breakfast on Saturday, whether it's church, whether it's date night, whether it's, if I'm understanding what you're saying, right? Having those repeatable weekly routines that aren't violated, where we build our because I realize this when in work, I have weekly standing meetings with multiple people. And if those meetings are not, if somebody doesn't show up to that meeting, the fruit is bad.
Yeah,
Like we're not fully on the same page. And imagine going for months like that, where you don't have that standing meeting, like you start to drift and get off on values. And even though people are still good, you have to have those standing meetings. And that needs to be like set in stone. And you're still talking in between the meetings too. But you're
yeah,
having those and so that's what I realized with my wife. We weren't having any standing meetings. So the only meetings we were having is the scattered ones. And there's
yeah,
kids crying and somebody's tired and it's very rushed. And it was like, we're not 100%. I don't know why it's so hard to do the standing meeting at home, where we do it at work as normal work. But those are huge, because then that's your vision casting, your planning, you're getting on the same page. And that's what I tell my wife. I'm like, hey, this isn't a date. Like we have our date night. That's Thursday night. This is our separate standing meeting where it's, here's what we're doing for the week, the schedule, the kind of things. Let me know
yeah,
any concerns you have, things like that, like priorities, like what are we going to be doing this week?
yeah. Because when you don't have that and you don't prioritize that, then those meetings that you mentioned with your wife, they end up, at least in my experience, being mostly reacting to life
Mm-hmm.
type meetings. And it just is exhausting. And it's, oh, I don't want to think about this right now. I don't want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
this right now. It's all loud. It's all this. It's all that. And that kind of really segues into the next key principle. If the first kind of key principle is ruthless prioritization,
Yeah.
the second key principle is building systems within your business that serve both missions, right? The mission of the business, but also the mission of the family, because the best entrepreneurs aren't just hustlers, they're master architects, right? They build businesses that work for them rather than businesses that own them. And so being able to be intentional about creating automations, delegation, clear operational frameworks that allow your business to thrive even when you do step away.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same idea when you're having those meetings with Maggie, or I'm having those meetings with Kayla. We're actually talking about how we want to proactively build our family rather than just reacting to whatever's happening. And it's the same kind of thing when we're focusing on business. We need to be thinking, how do we proactively build systems, automations, delegate, do all those things so that our business is able to operate even
Mm-hmm.
in the moments where we're not present in it. And we want to do the same.
Yeah.
I want to have an impact and an influence in my family, even when I'm not physically present in it, so that the times when I am physically present, it can be all about the relationship building. It can be all about going deep and having those meaningful quality moments. But that time that I have is not taken up by talking about how to solve problems or fix things or that sort of thing. Am I
Mm-hmm.
making sense in what I'm saying here?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like none of this is rocket science. I feel like people that struggle with like family, it's actually not rocket science, and it's actually very simple. It's the same principles that you would apply to your business. But here's why it's hard though, because it goes deeper than that. Because for me, this is what I realized, where I actually know how to do that. Like everything that I just said sounds amazing. I could write a book, right? But
Yeah.
that's not the hard part. The hard part is like your internal value system. And for me, it was like, what is my metric of success? And this is something I'm still wrestling with, because the world says it's money, right? It's money,
Mhm.
it's accolades out in the world. Like it's having a position, it's having a prominence out there. It's in here is not like esteemed when you're in the home. And so that's where it's like, where you have to actually like wrestle with yourself and be like, what is success to me? And that's why I think that's why there's all these conversations even about all this, because it's not hard.
Right.
You can apply those things. It's the time, it's the quality, it's the investing into each one, it's the scheduling, it's purposeful, all that. But we don't do it because like the business side just like railroads that and pushes it aside because it's lesser, and it's so easy for that to happen. And you're a good person, you don't want that to happen, but like months go by, like years even. And it's so that to me, that's the biggest thing, where it's like that internal wrestle of what is success. And I think that's where it goes deeper to maybe I'll make less money and maybe my business won't be as good, but that's not how I'm measuring things. Like I have to look. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's for me, my biggest thing of, because I got to a point where I was like, why is it hard? And I'm like, I think it's me that's off, because this is simple,
Yeah.
but I have to just sacrifice. And maybe that's even a hard word, because what you gain is just better anyways,
Yeah.
of fulfillment and having those relationships. Money, you can't buy that. There's so many people that their kids are off, and like no amount of money can fix it. It's too late.
Yeah. We believe as business owners that so much that our physical presence and contribution to the business is absolutely the most like important part of the business, when research actually says that's not true. And so we shift the focus. We think I've got to be physically present in the business for it to be successful. So that means I'm going to be not physically present in the family for the family to be successful. But the truth is
Yeah.
that actually the only way to have the family successful is for us to have some physical presence, because it's all about the relationship. Whereas in business, there's a Gallup study, for example, that says companies who are run by leaders who delegate effectively
Mm-hmm.
experience 33% higher revenue than those who don't. There's
That's
another
so
study by
crazy, right? It's
it's
like work
crazy.
harder, make less.
Exactly. Work harder, make less money. And then there's another study by McKinsey that I was reading that says that implementing automations into your business can
Mm-hmm.
reduce up to 30% of your repetitive business tasks, which
Mm-hmm.
would save the average entrepreneur 10 hours a week that could then be invested into their family. But oh
Mm-hmm.
man, I need to do those tasks to make sure they're done. But no, like a computer that is programmed well to do that in an automated way is going to be far more efficient at doing it than you'll ever be, Jack. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, if you set it up correctly, those automations can do a lot more than you can,
Yeah.
right? And can free you up. And the truth is, long term, that same McKinsey study talked about
Mm-hmm.
how business owners who scale themselves out of their business, out of their day-to-day operations of their business, are those businesses are 3 times more
Mhm.
likely to survive beyond 10 years.
Yeah.
And so all of the statistics and data say work yourself out of your business rather than think that your business depends entirely on you,
Hmm.
and your business will be more successful and your family will be more successful because you can give more time to it. And so I think this whole idea of building systems and delegating into your business as a way to give yourself more to your family, it is an absolute key principle in not only balancing work
Yeah.
and life, but in actually achieving the life that you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it comes down to what are your values? And not to trash Elon Musk, because we all look to him as the god of crushing it, but like his family's not good, right?
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
wake of not great relationships. And so I just go, is that my metric of success, right?
Yeah.
Or is it or is there something else where, you know, I think you can still do both. I do. Because we see
Yeah.
people where it's out of balance the other way too, right? Um, where people don't build anything of
Yeah.
financial value. But
And
I
they
think
struggle constantly and it puts
yeah.
strain on the family.
And yeah, exactly. And I think you can do both. But I tend to be an idealist with
Yes.
everything.
Well,
But I think you just so I guess my point with that was just saying where are your values, right? When you're like you said, when you're on your deathbed, it's like, oh, I wish I closed one more deal. Is it like what what are you working towards over the next 5, 10? So for me, I'm like, I'm just trying to picture my kids when they're 18 years old and they're all leaving the house and I want it to be good. And so I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have bought another business or made an extra $100,000, like whatever it is. Or did I invest in them, right? Where I have that lasting, that's true wealth.
yeah, absolutely. And that really, what you're saying segues into that third principle, right? You've got ruthless prioritization. You've got building systems that serve both missions. But then while you're in the process of building that,
Mm-hmm.
the third key principle is bring your family into that mission. Your business and your family, they don't have to be two competing forces. The most powerful leaders, they find ways to integrate both.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to let my kids see what I do. I want them to be a part of the journey, a part of the mission, a part of the vision that I'm building. I want to, as they get older, I want to take them on business trips. I want them to sit in on meetings with me. I want to teach them about wealth, about leadership, about impact. Because if my family feels like they're a part of the mission, then they're not going to see my work as something that's taking me away from them. It becomes something that they belong to, and I think that changes absolutely everything. Right?
Yeah. Bringing them into it, I think, is really cool to, yeah, just so they take ownership over it.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really cool about business that we can't do a lot of times with when you're working as an employee type role, where it's like, hey, bring your kid to work day that happens once a year and it's weird and no one actually does anything that day. Versus, hey, I can actually bring my kids into what I'm doing and it's actually work and slows you down. And because I have this little like side hustle with my kids, we do a laundry business where we go get coins and it's actually like really slow. And actually, I probably lose money doing that business, like
Yeah.
time and money, because I like
Yeah.
pay for everything and give them half the profits. But it's like super cool. And the ability to like bring them into that is important. And the values of it. Like, why are we working? Because I think work is noble and actually super like a holy like endeavor. But it gets abused and exploited and it just becomes like the God, right? Like the work becomes our religion. Where I think it just needs to be in its right place. Where it is a gift being able to work, but it needs to fit into the holistic balance of just life. And the thing about kids too, they don't care about that stuff. It's the whole idea of, oh, my dad got me a bunch of Christmas presents, but he wasn't around, he wasn't present. I didn't want another remote controlled race car. Like
Yeah.
it's just we hear all this stuff, but what the crazy thing is then we end up following in those same steps, right? Because it's such a
Yeah.
trap. It's so subtle and it's so like hard to really pinpoint. And months go by, years. You really have to be vigilant to do both successfully, and you have to fight. It's like the Bible says, riches are deceitful. It's like
Yeah.
rich people, like those who desire to get rich, pierce themselves with many sorrows. They go into a snare. No one ever thinks that's going to happen, but it's so conniving, and it's very easy to just slide into a bad spot. I mean, not overnight, but over years.
Yeah. And that's why at least giving like what you're doing with your boys, bringing them into seeing the value of what you're doing is actually investing a much greater gift into them long term. There's studies from Babson College and Cornell University that talk about like kids who grow up watching their parents build businesses are
Hmm.
twice as likely to become successful entrepreneurs themselves. Or the Cornell study, families who discuss shared values, like what you're talking about, that actually have conversations about shared values and
Hmm.
long term goals, are 23% more likely to remain close and experience higher levels of emotional well being
Hmm.
as a family. And so when you're able to integrate in the right ways,
Hmm.
it actually strengthens your family, where building a business and leading a family with integrity and with presence, they don't have to be two competing ideas. There's
Hmm.
ways to do it where your family actually will thrive more than people who weren't building businesses.
Yeah.
And I think it's this lie that entrepreneurs have bought into because of this hustle culture and work 80 hours a week and all this kind of stuff. The lie that entrepreneurs have bought into is that I'm just going to have to sacrifice my family for 5 years so that I can have them for 35 years. And the truth is, no, that there's no evidence to back that ever works. And everyone that I've ever talked to that has attempted that and came on the other side of it regrets it.
Mm.
They regret losing those 5 years of hitting the road and traveling. I've got my first business mentor. He's even been on this show, Michael Crowder. He
Yeah.
talked about, I heard him many times early on say, hey, I got to put my head down for the next 5 years to set my family up for life. And now he looks back, having been a 35-year entrepreneur,
Hmm.
he looks back and he's, man, those decisions were some of the worst that I made
Hmm.
because I missed some of the best years of my kids' lives and I'll never get those back. I can always go out and figure out ways to make more money. So I think this is the right conversation for entrepreneurs to be having right now,
Yeah.
especially with the pressure of success that we're constantly bombarded with. And what I would say is the absolute wrong definition of success. The right definition of success, it involves money, but it has to be more holistic than that. It has to be, I have this successful business and I have this successful family,
Hmm.
and they're not in competition with one another. And speaking to our listeners right now, if you've bought into the lie that those two things cannot exist together, then you're already way behind. And the way you're going to get ahead is by breaking your agreement with that lie and beginning to practice ruthless prioritization,
Hmm.
to begin building systems and infrastructure into your business that serve both missions, right? That serve the mission of building a great family, but also serve the mission of building a great business. And then while you're doing that, just bring your family into your world more. And
Yeah.
that is a recipe for not only a great business, but an amazing life, an
Hmm.
amazing family, a family that, like I said, repeating that Cornell study, is 23% more likely to stay close
Yeah.
and experience a lot more satisfaction and a lot more emotional well-being and relationship connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so good, man. I don't have any other thoughts.
This is a good
I'm
conversation.
kind
Let's
of
go
preaching to
through it.
myself right now.
Oh, me too, man. I'm looking right into my own eyes here. So
Yeah.
this
So
is great, man. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope this episode inspires you and helps you. We'll see you next time on Own the Exit.
see you next time, guys. Thanks.